So I'm going to take a few minutes to first review what our last year has been like, and then I'm going to go into what our plans are for the future. So, as I imagined it's been for everyone here, our last year has been one like no other. Pandemics can really do that, but I'm strangely grateful to the pandemic as it has shed some light on the issues in our community. So Lamoille Community House, since its origin, as Corey said earlier, has been an organization that responds to the need. When folks had nowhere to sleep on frigid nights in December 2017, we responded. And when the need for a seasonal shelter in Lamoille County became clear, we responded. And last year, when we saw an incredible number of people experiencing homelessness emerge in our county, we responded. When COVID hit, we responded by helping our guests move out of shelter and into hotel rooms where they could safely isolate themselves from the virus. But we didn't put them there and just leave them there. We stuck around. We stuck around 24/7 the entire summer and fall at one of the hotels housing folks through the state program. We created food systems to get people fed at the hotels before the state stepped in and created their own mass feeding program. We did daily wellness and temperature checks on people to make them feel safe and taken care of. We solved problems and made appropriate connections to doctors, mental health, and substance use professionals for our guests when needed. We only had only two known cases of COVID in the hotels throughout the entire pandemic. And with both, we worked really quickly. I mean, it was like phone call right then, right when we found out from the Department of Health, to help those guests isolate, and we helped prevent it from spreading. It didn't spread. It stayed at those two. And in our shelter facility, we had 0 cases of COVID. Okay, and that's a congregate setting. And we know that that's because we were extremely careful when we reopened in the winter of 2020. We reduced capacity to 10 guests. We built barriers around each cot out of PVC and shower curtains. That was really fun. And a lot of zip ties. And we implemented CDC approved protocols and policies to keep our guests virus free, and it worked. And we stayed open 24/7, which was, I think, a huge part of it, because that allowed for people to stay in one place and not have to hop around town all day, which could potentially spread the virus more. So we typically open in November and close in April. And although our shelter building closed as usual this year, we have not stopped working in some capacity or another since November 2019. And that's 20 consecutive months of work. Works a month. I want to take a moment to just recognize how incredible that is. For a small, young organization to go from working half a year at a time to almost working 2 years nonstop is just amazing. Again, there was a need, and we responded. If we were in person right now, I'd like look to you to like call back. There's a need, we respond, okay. So we haven't stopped responding. We're still responding. We're working now. We're doing outreach at all 3 hotels to folks who are sleeping outdoors. And what do? You might ask. We provide food and essential goods, comfort, safety, a listening ear, connection to services, and housing navigation services. We do this everywhere we go, in shelters, at hotels, with folks living outdoors. So even though we aren't working at the Yellow House right now, the second, we're still doing a lot. And we're doing it during the time of the year that in the past years, we weren't even operating. So what does that mean? Why am I bringing that up? It means that this year has proved something substantial to us, that our services are needed all year and not just in the winter months. So what are we going to do about it? Respond. That's what the crowd says. We're going to respond. Yes, that's correct. I really shouldn't have written this as if it was like a conversation, because at least it's funny, right? It's what we do. That's what we do. We respond. So that's why we're doing the work right now to create a shelter that operates 365 days per year. By providing emergency shelter year-round, we are setting ourselves and our community up for a higher success rate. As an organization that responds to housing emergencies, we have a duty to do that all year. Not responding in the warmer months will only delay people's journeys to stable housing. Okay, so we got the responding thing down. Shelter is an emergency response first and foremost, right? That's what we're needed for. When someone is kicked out of their home at like 2 a.m. or ages out of foster care or leaves an unsafe situation, they need somewhere to go right then. And we can be that place to go to 365 days a year. But I have to take a moment to acknowledge that shelter alone isn't the solution to ending homelessness. Ideally, one day shelter would be so brief that we'd question the need for it. But the systems for that ideal world aren't built yet. Homelessness can only truly end if we have enough homes for people, and if we have a strong collaborative system that moves people into homes quickly and helps prevent them from losing them. In the meantime, we need to work to create a sustainable system that supports people at every single stage of their journeys. And in my mind, there's 3 different components to achieving this and essentially ending homelessness. The first is to provide adequate shelter and emergency response, which is what we're doing right now by working to attain our forever home. A shelter space that can provide resources and support 365 days of the year is essential. When people come to our shelter, they're getting more than a warm bed and a hot meal. They're being connected to services, they're making ties to the community, and they're getting a chance to breathe and plan their next steps for their own on their own pace. I'm gonna drink some water. The second component seems kind of obvious. It's to create more housing and to put people in housing immediately. Shelter should be as brief as possible. Shelter is a response to the emergency. It's not a long-term plan. But we can't create long-term plans with people if there aren't enough homes to put them in. So a big part of this is homes. We need the homes. And thank you to all the, Lamoille Housing Partnership who works on that and all of our partners. Shout out real quick. And then the third component is when we're putting people in the homes is we need to utilize the housing first model. And the housing first model says that housing should be the first priority for someone who is homeless before addressing any other need a person has, like employment, mental health care, anything. Don't even worry about those. We can't expect people to focus on addressing any part of their lives that are presenting as barriers to success until they have a stable place to live. Shelter is a good first step, but it's not the answer to this. Housing is. I see shelter as a safe place to land and housing as a place to sustain. We can't put restrictions and eligibility criteria on being allowed to have a home. Why should only the sober have homes? Why should only those with no criminal background have homes? Why should only those with stable mental health have homes? How can we expect people to address these barriers when they don't even know where they're going to be sleeping at night? These people are in constant survival mode, and survival mode doesn't do long-term planning. Survival means planning for now. And when we tell people they only deserve a home once they have everything else figured out, we're just prolonging their homelessness. So while permanent housing is the solution to ending homelessness, our shelter's role is a crucial first step for people starting on their path to stable housing. As a shelter, we not only provide a place to sleep and food, we provide case management, housing navigation, connection to other services in our community, like mental health support, substance use support, employment support, all the supports, all of them that exist, we connect them if that's something they say they need. We help people make these connections right then and there at the beginning of their journey. And having a shelter 365 days a year means allowing for those connections to be made all year round, in person, 7 days a week. When people eventually transition into stable housing, they'll have more of a support network ready for them to help keep them housed. And I'd like to add one more thing before moving on to the gratitude part that I'm going to go to next, because I talk a lot about this. And I mean, I talk a lot about how people deserve a home to the point where I probably annoy my neighbors with it. But I want to stress one thing, that this isn't only important because people need homes or only important for the people who need homes. This is crucial to building a thriving community. Providing housing creates opportunity for people, and doing so helps the entire community, not just those without homes. Think about it. How can a community truly thrive without the input and contributions of every single member? And right now, we're not hearing from this population, and we're not listening to them enough. We are not accessing their full potential contribution to society because they are not able to access it themselves. When I talk someone's ear off about housing those without homes, it's for the sake of the entire community too. The people we see in shelter are smart, creative, kind, funny, extremely strong and resourceful people with a lot to offer to our society. We won't be able to receive what they have to offer if we don't have equitable access to housing. And without their contributions, our community isn't as strong as it could be. So if you help us end homelessness, it's not just for those suffering from it, but it's for our entire community too. Okay, now let's any comments before I go to the next part? Because I just talked and my dogs were quiet. that was a miracle.